Welcome back to our study of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. We have been learning what duty God requires of man, and we have seen that the duty God requires is obedience to his revealed will. We have also been introduced to the moral law, summarily comprehended in the 10 Commandments. Today we slow down before the commandments themselves, because the Lord does not begin with bare commands. He begins with a preface. He tells his people who he is and what he has done for them, before he tells them how they are to walk. That order matters deeply. The gospel logic of the preface is that God redeems first, and obedience flows from redeeming grace. Grace grounds law. The Lord does not say, "Obey me so that I may become your God." He says, "I am the Lord your God, your Redeemer, therefore live as my redeemed people." Let us learn the 43rd question together. The Catechism asks, what is the preface to the 10 Commandments? And it answers, the preface to the 10 Commandments is in these words, "I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." Read the answer carefully. It is not yet a command. It is a declaration from God himself. Before he says, "Thou shalt," or "Thou shalt not," he says, "I am the Lord thy God." Hold that first word of grace before you as we consider what it means. Notice where the Lord begins. He begins with himself. Moses records in Exodus, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." That is the voice behind the commandments. This is not an abstract rulebook floating down from heaven. This is the living God speaking personally to his covenant people. He names himself as the Lord, the self-existent, faithful, covenant-keeping God, and he claims his people as his own. Moses records the same preface again in Deuteronomy, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." The repetition matters. When Israel hears the law in Exodus, and when the next generation hears it again in Deuteronomy, God does not let his people forget who is speaking. He is the Lord their God. He does not stand at a distance and merely announce requirements. He draws near and says that he is their God. That one word, your, is full of mercy. The commandments come from the God who has bound himself to his people in grace. So when we hear the law, we must hear the voice of the Lord, who knows us, claims us, and speaks to us as his people. His authority is never less than absolute, but it is not cold or impersonal. It is the authority of the Lord who belongs to his people and to whom his people belong. The preface also tells us what God has done. Moses records in Exodus that God says, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." Israel did not rescue itself and then receive God's approval. Israel was enslaved, helpless, and oppressed, and the Lord came down in mercy to deliver. The same truth is preserved when Moses records in Deuteronomy, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." The rescue comes first. The commandments follow. So obedience is never the price we pay to win God's favor. It is the grateful answer of a people already redeemed. The New Testament teaches the same pattern when we read in Luke's Gospel that we, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. Deliverance leads to service. Redemption does not leave God's people without direction. It frees them to serve him without fear. That is why we must see the gospel logic of the preface clearly. God does not say, "Obey me, and then I will redeem you." He says, "I have redeemed you, therefore walk as my people." Grace comes first, and obedience follows. The law, received rightly, is not a ladder by which sinners climb into God's favor. It is the grateful path on which redeemed people walk with their Redeemer. Now let us learn the 44th question. The Catechism asks, what doth the preface to the 10 Commandments teach us? And it answers, the preface to the 10 Commandments teacheth us that because God is the Lord, and our God and Redeemer, therefore we are bound to keep all his commandments. This answer draws out the lesson of the preface. It teaches us why obedience is owed, and also why obedience is not a burden laid on strangers. The one who commands is the Lord. He is our God. He is our Redeemer. Therefore we are bound to keep all his commandments. The Catechism gives 3 reasons, and we should take them in order. First, because God is the Lord. He made us, sustains us, rules over us, and has full authority to command us. His law is not advice from a wise friend. It is the holy will of the Lord of heaven and earth. Peter writes, "But as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, since it is written, 'You shall be holy, for I am holy.'" God's command rests on God's own holy character. We are called to holiness because the God who calls us is holy. Second, because he is our God. Moses records in Deuteronomy, "You shall therefore love the Lord your God, and keep his charge, his statutes, his rules, and his commandments always." Notice that love and obedience belong together. The Lord's commands come within covenant relationship. He has taken his people to himself, and he calls them to love him by keeping his charge. Third, because he is our Redeemer. Again, Moses records in Exodus, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." Redemption does not cancel obedience. Redemption makes obedience fitting. We read in Luke's Gospel that we, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness, before him all our days. If the Lord has rescued us from bondage, then we are not freed in order to return to another slavery. We are freed to belong to him, to love him, to trust him, and to walk in his ways. His commandments are not the price of redemption. They are the shape of redeemed life. Think of the whole logic in these three truths. He is the Lord, so his commandments carry divine authority. He is our God, so his law is spoken in covenant love. He is our Redeemer, so his grace frees us for thankful obedience. Take away any one of these, and our understanding of the commandments becomes distorted. If we remember only authority, we may hear the law as crushing demand. If we remember only relationship, we may treat God's holiness too lightly. If we remember only redemption, but forget obedience, we may turn grace into permission for sin. But the preface holds everything together. The Lord who commands is the God who claims us, and the Redeemer who saves us. Therefore we are bound to keep all his commandments, not some of them, not only the ones that fit our preferences, all of them. Yet we seek to keep them as children who have been loved, not as strangers trying to earn a place at the table. Grace does not weaken obedience. Grace gives obedience its proper root, its grateful spirit, and its living hope in Christ. Let us close by turning these truths over in our hearts. First, why is it important that God speaks redemption before commandment? If we miss that order, we will misunderstand both grace and law. Second, where are you tempted to treat obedience as a way to earn God's favor, rather than as the grateful response of one who has received mercy? And third, how does knowing God as Redeemer make his commandments good news? The Lord's law exposes our sin, drives us to Christ, and teaches redeemed people how to live before him. So do not hear the commandments as detached rules. Hear them as the voice of the Lord your God, the Redeemer who brings his people out of bondage and calls them to walk with him. The sources for this lesson are the Holy Scriptures in the English Standard Version, and the 43rd and 44th questions and answers of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. The proof texts named in this lesson come from Exodus, Deuteronomy, Luke's Gospel, and Peter's first letter. In our next lesson, we will begin the commandments themselves with the first commandment, that we have no other gods before him,